surrounding areas, well, then you might want to know about the big changes that are happening here in the real estate world here in Montana. We're going to dive right into it right now. My name is Diana Filkins. I'm a realtor serving Western Montana, and the real estate market and just real estate in general, how everything is done, has changed a little bit in the past few weeks, actually. So here in Montana, the changes happened on August 12th. So we're 2 weeks in, and there are some things that you need to know about if you're going to buy land, residential. If you're planning on buying here in Montana, here are the things that you need to know about the NAR settlement and lawsuit, the National Association of Realtors, and how it does or does not affect you will be kind of dependent on your situation. So, every state is different, so please do not take this and go apply it to a different state, because that is not the case. So the first major change that the NAR settlement and lawsuit brought on is that buyers are now required to sign an agreement with a real estate agent before touring homes. Now, let's take a couple steps back. So you have a choice, right? You have a choice to, yes, use a real estate agent, or no, you do not want to use one. And if your option is no, you do not want to use a realtor and you want to represent yourself, you are able to. You can do whatever you think is best, and you are able to not use one to represent you in a transaction. Now, there are pros to cons of that. Now, if you choose that yes, you want representation, you will need to sign an agreement before touring any homes. So, this is true if you click on the find an agent on the Zillow, like if there's a house that you like and you click on that, if you want to go and look at a home, you'll need to sign an agreement. And what that agreement says is something along the lines of, you, buyer, will be responsible for paying X% or flat fee if the seller is not willing to pay the buyer's agent. You will be responsible for that. Now, if you go to an open house on a random weekend or whenever it may be, you do not need to sign a representation agreement. And anyone that tells you you do is a big fat liar. Okay, so if you go to an open house, no agreement is required. Now, if you want to, that's super duper. Go for it. If you don't want to, it is not required. So, if you want to get a feel for somebody, it is definitely so important that you interview your realtor, a few different realtors. See which one you vibe with. See which one communicates best with you. See which one responds to your questions. Do they respond to your questions? See which one gets creative. Ask them what they will do if their fee isn't covered by the seller. Ask them. The more creative, the better. Anyway, that's my personal opinion. So, if you do choose to get representation, you will need to get an agreement signed that will determine what the buyer's agent will be compensated for if the seller chooses not to pay the buyer's agent. Okay? that's big change number one. Now, there are pros and cons to getting a contract, basically, between you and the buyer's agent signed before you get to know somebody. So like I said before, definitely interview a few different realtors. Go have coffee with them. You don't have to go look at a house. Go to their office. Have a Zoom call. Just chit chat for 5, 10, 15 minutes and decide which one you like. That way, when it is time to sign an agreement, it's not like anything major. Now, the way that these they're called buyer agent agreements or buyer broker agreements. They're called a few different things. They're very easy to get out of. So, if you decide that Joe Schmo Realtor, you don't like them, you can just send them an email and say, I no longer want to work with you. Sometimes a phone call will suffice. Sometimes a text will suffice. It's pretty easy to get out of these agreements. Now, I'm going to say that with an asterisk because, of course, you need to read the agreement from literally head to toe to make sure that it is easy. Now, make sure that your realtor didn't put in there that if there's a termination fee, if there's an expiration fee, if there's a retainer that you would be responsible for. Those are things you need to either agree to, be very clear on what those mean, or don't agree with them, and if they try and sneak it in there, make sure you ask about it. So, lots going on. By the way, we're driving into Missoula. This is Lolo right here. We're driving into Missoula. We're going to go to Yopes, the supermarket. So that's where we're going. So you're going to come with me. Okay, big change number 2 from the NAR settlement and lawsuit is that the compensation that a buyer's agent will earn is no longer plastered on the MLS. They literally took that field out of the MLS. So it's not going to pop up on Zillow or Realtor or Trulia or none of those. What will happen is if a seller has decided, yes, that they are going to represent you, if they are going to offer a compensation to the buyer's agent, it can be done in a few different ways. So they can keep it a secret and tell their listing agent, don't you tell what I'm going to compensate. That's one. 2, their listing agent is going to advise them to keep it on the hush-hush, but that yes, you're going to offer it so that it can be negotiated into the contract. Now, there are lots of mixed feelings about negotiating a buyer's agent's compensation within the offer. So let's play out a scenario real quick. Let's say that there is a seller, and the seller is like, yeah, I do want to offer a buyer's agent compensation, super duper, but listing agent, you're not allowed to tell. Okay? The listing agent is not allowed to tell. So when that buyer's agent is like, hey, Mr. or Mrs. Listing Agent, what is the buyer's agent compensation? They're like, say something along the lines of, I can't tell you, but yes, the sellers are willing to offer something. Do you know what that thing is? No, we do not. So let's say 3 offers are put in on a house, and they're pretty neck and neck in terms of the terms. So let's say that the price point, they all came in at asking price, and the closing date is good, and the contingencies, let's say that they're all on par, but buyer's agent number 1 put into the offer that they want 2% for themselves. Buyer 2 put in 2.5% for their buyer's agent, and buyer 3 said that they want 3% for their buyer's agent. Now, as a seller, which one am I going to pick? Of course, me as a seller, I'm going to pick the lowest one that has the least amount of money out of my pocket. Is that fair to the buyers? I don't think so. But it's also not fair to the buyer's agent, because why should they be compensated less? And let's just assume everybody's doing the same amount of work. Why should they be compensated less to get that winning offer? So, think what you want. Lots of things to ponder on that one. So, yeah, that the buyer's agent compensation is no longer in the MLS. And if if the seller does decide to compensate the buyer's agent, they can instruct their listing agent also to be like, yeah, tell them it's all 3%. Just tell them. Are there pros and cons to that as well? Hell yeah, there are pros and cons to that. But that's something that you're going to have to talk to your realtor about. Or if you would like to work with me, all my contact information is down in the description box below. I would love to talk to you about your options. Now, let's say that you are the buyer and the seller has decided, no, I will not be paying for the buyer's agent. That is on you. That is your problem. Buyer, you need to figure that out. So, as the buyer, it is now on you and your buyer's agent to be like, should you try and negotiate it into the contract? Can you get creative with calling it a concession or a closing cost as opposed to buyer compensation? Do we just need to change the words around? Or if you're not able to do any of those options for whatever reason, then you, the buyer, will need to be responsible for paying your buyer's agent out of your pocket. Now, you as the buyer are allowed to tell your buyer's agent, well, I'm already strapped for cash for my down payment and my closing costs and my earnest money. I don't have enough money to pay you, buyer's agent. So if a seller is truly, truly not willing to pay a buyer's agent, then I don't want to see those houses. So then there's that. So those are the two big changes that are kind of ruffling a shit ton of feathers. Because the whole point of the NAR settlement and lawsuit, the lawsuit and then the settlement, was to have more transparency about how realtors are paid. And in my personal opinion, these changes have done the exact opposite. Because it was plastered all over the MLS how much a buyer's agent would make. And now it's not. And it's returning to, let's keep it a secret. Because the seller and the listing agent can come together and be like, no, we're not telling. Because if they're willing to do 3%, but let's say a buyer's agent only asks for 2.5% in their offer, then they're winning by 0.5%. Hell, that's more money in your pocket, right? So there's strategy behind all of this, and it's so incredibly important to make sure that, one, your realtor is knowledgeable, two, make sure that they are creative to your particular situation. Now, let's go back to some of my personal thoughts about all of this. Do I think that sellers should offer to pay a buyer's agent compensation? Yeah, I do. Because if you think about it, a seller, more often than not, is also a buyer. So it does even out. So yes, let's just say, hypothetically, that the seller pays their agent, the listing agent, and the buyer's agent. Super duper. On their next transaction, when they're buying, oh, look at that. It will be the seller, not on them, to pay the listing agent and the buyer's agent. So it, in my personal opinion, it does even out. And it does, there's a lot going on here, and it can get real sticky real quick. And this lawsuit, now I have said that I personally think that it takes the transparency out of what realtors are making, but it also brings to light what realtors offer and their value. And I will be the first to admit there are horrible realtors out there. Terrible. There are bad apples in the real estate profession. I understand that. Yes, I have dealt with them. Oh boy, have I dealt with them. But you know what? You know what else is true? And two things can be true at the same time. There are bad apples in every single freaking profession. Every single one. And, you know, there might be like the most amazing realtor ever, and they just do not jive with like all of the people. They might jive with like most of the people, but that's why there's an agent for everybody. That's why it's so incredibly important that you interview a few, go have coffee with them, hop on a Zoom call, ask them questions. You don't know what questions to ask? Reach out to me. I will help you make a list of questions that is very specific to your situation. Because that's the thing about real estate. Every fucking transaction is different. Some are easy peasy, which makes us realtors look like we're making a bajillion dollars when something is so easy. But what people don't see, oh shit, where's the supermarket? Okay, we're good. I thought it was back there. We're good. When things don't go well, that's where realtors, we make our money worth every single penny to whoever, whatever side is paying for it. But that's what people don't see, because the clients don't see how messy it can get behind the scenes. And yes, there are super duper easy transactions. Absolutely. But there are also some messy as fuck ones. And I am a believer in all things will balance out, and good things happen to good people and bad things happen to bad people, and the universe will just take care of all of it. I'm a firm believer. So those are the two major changes. You want to make sure that your agent is knowledgeable and is creative. You better fucking hope that they are creative and they know what the hell they're doing, because if they don't, you're in deep doo-doo. And that's my very professional way of saying that. Get yourself a good agent. And of course, if you would love to work with me, I would love that. Reach out, call, text, email. My contact information is in the description box below. I'm going to go to Yolks and grab some cookies and put them into Tupperware and pretend I baked them myself. So, if you have any questions, leave them down below, and let's keep this conversation going. Until next time, take care.